My name is Sophie. I use she, her pronouns. I studied in Montpellier, France. I think I always knew I wanted to study in France, and I always really looked forward to the idea of going, especially because before study abroad, I really hadn't traveled much at all, especially not alone, and only once outside of the country, just briefly. And so I knew that I wanted to step outside of my comfort zone and try going somewhere where I would really be forced to practice a language I had been learning for a long time, but practice it with people who were native speakers. And I wanted to be in an immersive environment, living with a host family, so I would really be forced to jump into the deep end. Comparing what I thought French people were going to be like, and that kind of stereotype of being rude or unfriendly to Americans, I didn't find that to really be true, at least where I was living in the south of France. My host parents, at least, were very friendly and very supportive to me. Of course, there are people who are going to realize you're American very early on because, you're always going to have a little bit of that accent, even when you're practicing and getting a lot better at another language. At least for me, I think I'm always going to have an American accent in French. And so, yeah, sometimes people could, be quick to jump into English or to, I don't know, maybe roll their eyes at you, but honestly, I feel like that was rarely the experience. I found people were really friendly. When I arrived, I had to have this really big reckoning, I think, with how good I thought my French was. I realized that I had a lot more room for progress than maybe I anticipated. And I went to France with the intention of improving my French. I knew that I had a lot of room to grow before arriving. I thought that most of the improvement I needed was in my accent, but in getting there, I realized honestly, the accent is something I think you have to learn to live with to a certain extent. You can improve your pronunciation for sure, but you're always going to have a little bit of an accent. What I really needed to improve with was my vocabulary, my grammar, just kind of the little random things you say in conversation, even just the noise of pausing, or instead of saying like you would say that differently. I think I had to accept that, not that they were going to laugh at me, but that I was going to make some mistakes and errors and they might come across as kind of funny or silly. And I think I had to own that and try to make jokes where I could, just do anything to say, okay, yes, I'm definitely not going to be the smartest person at this table, but I can still hopefully be a positive presence just by continuing to try. It definitely could feel demoralizing sometimes to not be able to really show up as the person I consider myself to be. When I would sit at that dinner table with my host parents, I felt very limited, and it's kind of weird realizing how different your personality is because you just don't have the same tools to express yourself that you do in your native language. There were times where at the end of the meal, my host mom would look at me and she would say, "Oh, you're kind of quiet, you look very tired." And, it got to a point where I'm like, no kidding, of course I'm tired. Like I am just constantly trying to chase around these different ideas that I barely understand. And it's ridiculous because I had been taking French for years before that. Like certainly I should have been better. But quickly you just realize wow, I'm not, no matter what grades I got in the US, I still have a lot of room to grow. The first thing that helped me was just giving myself some grace. I think that's something I've tried to work on all throughout college. And so I just had to own, I'm gonna make mistakes and I just need to keep talking, because the alternative of just being silent is I'm not gonna make any progress. And so I feel like I was constantly making mistakes, and I would have a question and I would start the question and then halfway through my sentence realize, I don't even know how to say the second part of this, but I'm just gonna try to. And I think that was very helpful for me because, believe it or not, people are able to figure out what you're saying, even if it kind of just sounds like nonsense to you. So that was helpful, just kind of pushing forward and trying to laugh about it whenever possible. If I ever saw an in for a joke, just going for it. Even if it didn't land, it was worth trying. I think my host parents appreciated the effort, and I talk to them now, or at least my host mom, on WhatsApp, and she says how the host students she has now, they're just not as inquisitive or interested in learning about French culture. So I'm like, okay, whether or not I'll go down as the best French speaker, I know I won't, but I think hopefully I'll be remembered as someone who really made an effort to get to know these people and their country. I think if you're questioning whether putting yourself out of your comfort zone or jumping into the deep end when it comes to learning a new language, I would say it's absolutely worth it, and what you need to do is just continue to try. My whole 5 months of studying abroad felt like this constant uphill battle or swimming upstream, and you just had to keep going. And so that was my big takeaway for study abroad is just keep going, keep trying. It's going to get better. Even if you're not perfect by the end, it'll get easier.